Hi everyone, today I wanted to talk about the topic of overthinking, how we are all overthinkers, it's not just you, good news for you, and what we can do about it. So I think I've taught by now over 50 people how to meditate, and it's funny because when people come into my classes for the first time or I meet them for the first time, they often ask me, how do we deal with thoughts in meditation? I'm an overthinker. I'm constantly thinking about things all day. And they say it as though it's just them. I'm an overthinker. As if it was like sort of a personality type or a quirk. What I want to tell you today is that actually overthinking is entirely universal. And I'm going to explain to you why. We are always overthinking. We are always thinking. It helps to meditate, to realize this, and sometimes this is what puts people off meditation, is that they realize just how much is going on in there all the time. And actually the first time I did meditation, it was one of the things that I realized literally on the first session was, wow, I've been thinking my entire life, and I've sort of been aware of it, but I've not really, because I've actually just been drowning in it my entire life. And that was quite a life-changing moment, just that little insight. But we are all in this. We all have this. There's a lot of research being done into our thinking, and basically, in a nutshell, what happens is that when we have nothing calling our attention, so let's say we're not involved in a task, we're not involved in a conversation, we're not doing anything in particular, we're not doing something that occupies our attention and requires effort. What happens is there's an area in the brain that switches on, it becomes more active, and it does so consistently. This is what happens when we don't have any input or we're not having to put any effort into something. This part of the brain activates. And how do we experience that? Because every brain, when a certain area of the brain activates, we experience some change in our psychology, our physiology, or we experience the effect in some way. The way we experience that is basically thinking, wild thinking, out of control thinking, in the past, in the future, planning, remembering, regretting, lost in mental fantasies, lost in bad memories, good memories, just carried away by our thoughts. This area of the brain that activates is called the default mode network. Let's just ponder that for a second, and this will show you conclusively why we are all overthinkers. It's called the default mode network. It's the default mode of the brain. It's the default mode of human beings. It's our default experience. I often say this in my meditation classes, that thinking is the default human experience. You might think, it's our senses, or it's our body, or it's the sense of hearing, or it's a combination of all of these. Sorry, it's actually not. It's the default mode network. It's thinking. It's compulsive thinking. This is the default state of human beings. This is our most dominant experience. Just ponder that for a second. Isn't that quite a remarkable insight? And at this point you might get quite depressed and think, if it's a default mode, then I'm going to be an overthinker forever and there's no way to work around it. That's also not true. And actually in meditation, one of the things you do is you train yourself to change your relationship to this overthinking, to your thinking process. One thing you're going to realize with meditation is that you are not your thoughts. And I don't mean that in some cliched way, as like a quote that I'm going to put on Instagram with a nice background to sound good and get more followers. If you have this insight for yourself that you are not your thoughts, and you actually live it, and I'm not just saying, you have it once and then you tell everyone about it and then you forget about it and move on. If you actually live it and you work at it and you cultivate this insight over months and years, your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee that. Absolutely guarantee it. What you'll realise is that thoughts aren't really what you think they are. I didn't mean to make a pun there. They're actually not solid. They're not real. They're not, they have no real power to them if you see them in a certain way, if you experience them fully. What you'll actually discover is that they are very translucent, they're very temporary, they're very fleeting, they are transient, they are see-through, they are translucent. They've really not got any reality to them. It's just activity in your first person experience. But that's not what we experience when we're lost in the default mode network. We experience them as a solid mass, as this identity defining experience. We buy into it, we're absorbed in the film, not just in the chatter but in our mental images too. The two combine and create this very powerful mental film or documentary or accompanying music to our lives. When we're lost in the default mode network, we buy into that and we have no way out. With meditation, we train ourselves to de-addict ourselves from that, to not identify, to see the thinking process as it is. And actually, there is pretty conclusive scientific work that shows that meditation over time reduces default mode network activity and increases activity in regions that control and regulate the default mode network. So overthinking is not just a you thing. I think it's really important to realise that. It's the fundamental human experience. It's not just our dominant experience, it's actually the experience that defines us as humans. Dogs and cats and lizards and frogs are not lost in thought because they don't have symbolic thought. They don't have, the cortex, the human cortex. They don't have that. We experience thought uniquely and we experience it almost all the time and it completely dominates our perception. But there is a way out. And I think I've not found a more effective method than meditation for giving you direct insight into your mind and your thinking on an experiential level and discovering what it actually is. It's not solid, it's actually translucent, temporary. There's nothing really there if you pay enough attention. And also giving you that psychological insight to realise what is actually going on in your mind all the time and how is that affecting your life. And you might be quite shocked at just what you'll discover. And eventually you'll train yourself not to interfere with your thinking, but just to see it as it is. And you'll know that on a fundamental level, this is not who you really are. You're something much more permanent and reliable and peaceful and grounded and ever present than this wild, chaotic thinking process. Alright, if you want to train with me, you can do one-to-one coaching with me. Head to the website, I'll put a link in the description. Or I've got online meditation classes and I've also got an online meditation course, 6-week course. You train yourself with my help how to meditate and you'll build a really solid foundation in this work. Thanks for watching. I hope this has helped you understand overthinking, your own overthinking, and that there is a way out, to have inspiration and hope that there is a way out of it. Thank you.